onto our first panel of the day. We, of course, couldn't have a programmatic event without covering one of the most discussed topics in our industry that Lindsay and I have just been discussing, beyond cookie deprivation, privacy sandbox, and the programmatic ecosystem. The session will be covering broader impacts on advertisers, publishers, and tech providers, and we'll address the critical questions around data transparency, user consent, and the evolving regulatory landscape. Again, please remember to submit your questions for the panelists in the Q&A box. With that, I would like to welcome Aniss Laamouri, Head of AdTech at IAB UK, to introduce his panelists. Aniss, over to you.
Thank you, Wayne, and let's see can I just confirm that everybody can hear me, please, and see me?
We can hear you and see you.
Thank you so much, Wayne. So thank you, Wayne, and thank you for the enriching discussion, the positive energy addressing non-calculated topics. I can start without imitating you, Wayne, and wishing a happy Pride Month to the LGBTQ community. Aniss, I'm Head of AdTech at IAB UK. Welcome to our panel session, Beyond Cookie-Depreciation, Privacy Sandbox, and Programmatic Ecosystem. Today, we're diving into how the end of third-party cookies is shaking things up in AdTech. We've got an amazing lineup of speakers who will share with us their valuable insight and opinion. We'll talk about how the deprecation affects advertisers, publishers, solution providers, touching on key topics like, you must have guessed it, data, privacy, and how this is reshaping our industry. I'll also ask our panelists to share real-world example, practical tips to help us navigate the new landscape, and hopefully covering as many angles as possible to keep our friends happy. If we get enough time at the end, I'll be happy to consider questions from the audience. All right, let's go then, and we'll ask our dear panelists to introduce themselves. How about we start, Jill?
Yes. Hi. Thank you. Thank you, Aniss. Hi, everyone who's joined in. Great discussion before Wayne and Lindsay. So my name is Mathilde Verron. I'm a privacy lead at Google. I cover specifically Google Ads, and just to be clear, because then I will be touching on Chrome a bit later and the privacy sandbox. And yeah, my team basically help customers navigate the changes, regulatory and the platform changes as the upcoming Chrome third-party changes. So yeah, so very much looking forward to this discussion and how we can share a little bit about how we view preparation for the third-party application.
Thank you, Mathilde. Next is going to be you, Phil, please.
Good morning, everyone. Yep, so I'm Phil. I head up global marketing science at GroupM Nexus. Got 15 years experience working across a variety of fields, including adults, analytics, media measurement, and currently marketing science. And I lead a team of 200 or so global specialists across different regions who really focus on utilization of AI for the purpose of really solving a lot of the challenges that cookie list presents. So really looking forward to the panel today.
Thank you, Phil. You're up, Andrew, please.
Hey, everyone, and thanks, Aniss. I'm Andrew Furst. I'm the Chief Commercial Officer. I've got about 11, 12 years in programmatic experience coming from the agency side, the sell side, and now the data side. So we're a cookieless data provider, and we're helping to navigate. We're helping a lot of brands actually globally, both in Europe, but also in the US, navigate a lot of the changes that are happening in terms of providing privacy safe data that can be really useful in driving media efficiencies.
Thank you, Andrew. And you last, Tanya. I'm sorry, I'm just putting the order on this slide.
Oh, no worries. Good morning, everybody. My name's Tanya Field, and I am one of the co-founders and chief product officer of Novatiq. We basically work with telcos around the globe to deliver an alternative ID solution that is privacy safe, doesn't track users, and enables publishers to recognize repeat users and advertisers to access first-party audiences.
Thank you very much, everyone. As I said, amazing lineup. My first question is going to be about the challenges that advertisers and the publishers face as third-party cookies are being phased out. How about we start with you, Mathilde? Don't mind.
Yeah, okay, that was the first of it.
It's
the order of the slide. So I think, generally speaking, I think the fade out of the cookie is not completely new. I know they've been iterating for 4 or 5 years. So I think the challenges are known by the industry, but obviously the Chrome announcement a couple of years back, of course, accelerated the scrutiny on how you prepare for it. So I think the challenges really come down to there is a high reliance on third-party cookies in our industry, especially in programmatic for targeting and measurement. So that's a challenge itself, is how you change the way you've been working all along. And then there's challenges that we touched on a bit earlier in the discussion with Wayne, is that then essentially with the change. So I think there's a lot of discussion about when do you prepare, how do you prepare, and what are the alternative solutions, and how much they still maintain certain use cases while balancing with the user privacy. So I think for publishers and advertisers alike and ad tech, there's been a lot of work to be done, first to, of course, implement new ways of what we call the private Sandbox API, but also work closely with all the vendors to assess what is their future-proofing plan to allow for a healthy programmatic ecosystem. So I think the challenge is the complexity of the change, as well as the change itself. I think that's generally how we view it. But yeah, that's the gist, I would say, for the challenges. And I think, obviously, the months to come are really the months that everyone should be preparing for it. And that also put a bit of pressure on everyone to add that to their dev queue that's already very high.
Okay, how about you, Phil? Would you mind sharing with us your perspective from the infrastructure side?
Of course. So like Mathilde has pointed to a lot of the key challenges there around measurement, targeting, optimization. And then there's overall concerns in terms of things like privacy sandbox, long-term applicability, because there's so much change going on. And obviously that's going to accelerate further in the future. And really, whether privacy sandbox can continue to be and operate within the cross-channel landscape, increasing fragmentation, and obviously identity particularly. But with all these problems, it needs to be seen as there's really a key opportunity. Obviously, we can look at everything negatively, but there's a real opportunity for the industry to do better than cookies. Cookies were always a bit of a makeshift solution, never fully functional in any term, either measurement, targeting, or optimization. And what we're doing now in terms of utilizing custom AI as a means of bridging the gap of what cookies gave us in the past and giving us something new is actually more robust, I think, as a long-term measure, and obviously more in line with consumer expectations to avoid bombardment of ads, cookie bombing, the sort of stuff that we saw in the past. There's a real opportunity to see less ads, but more effective ads that operate online.
Thank you, Phil. I totally agree with you that we can do better indeed in bridging the gap, especially that one of the needs from advertisers has been, an agency has been the ability to track users across different environments and different devices. That's why I would like to have feedback from Andrew and Tanya, because the solutions you're offering are indeed can work across channels. So how about you go first, Tanya?
Yeah, sure. I pretty much, obviously, as one would expect, echo everything that we've heard already this morning. I think the issue is in the complexity of the challenge, because essentially the infrastructure that everyone's been using for the longest time, although it didn't work very well, is changing exponentially. So it is a huge change in the whole ecosystem itself. And we should use that change much for the better. And we should use that change to ensure that we can basically deliver less ads, as Phil said, but obviously much more appropriate ads to the end users. And clearly, we believe that one way that you can do that is that you leverage the benefit of the deterministic human knowledge that the telco has about the individual, not so that you can necessarily leverage the benefit of telco first-party audiences, although they are working very well in some instances, but also because the telco itself is in a position to be able to deliver a service direct to the ecosystem. And that service being one of, they can consistently recognize the users whilst protecting their identity, because they do not need to give any information about who those particular users are, given that all interactions go across the network and they're by definition cross-channel. And that means that telcos are in a great position to not only enable ID, but they're also in a great position to follow that through with the measurement and attribution that's required as an end-to-end solution.
All right, next thoughts. Thank you. Thank you, Tanya. Andrew, do you mind sharing with us with your perspectives about the challenges advertisers have been facing?
Yeah, no, I think the nice thing about this question is it's not super controversial that we're facing challenges, and I think we're all facing the same challenges. So we'll all agree on that part. I think the one thing that I'll add to just try and toss something new in is that there are some differences in the way that we're going about solutions. So I see, and I'll probably say this again at some point, that we see the industry factioning off into both tracked and untracked solutions. On one hand, you have the ID solutions that are trying to recreate some sort of an identifier to identify the same user in more places than another for both targeting and measurement purposes. And then you have probabilistic untracked solutions. Digiseg is one of those. It's much like Lindsay from ExchangeWire was just saying before, where we're moving away from that super niche targeting of I need to find vegan kayakers in London. It's now more, okay, what does that look like from a demographic perspective? Do they have kids? Do they live in a home in the suburbs? Do they have a car? Like, what does this audience look like other than the fact that what do vegan kayakers in London look like? You know what I mean? So I think that's the difference between the way we're going about it versus the way many of yours are. But yeah, I think those are the challenges, the core challenge at the heart of it is that we all need to somehow be accountable and demonstrate performance, whatever that may look like. Publishers need to demonstrate performance in order to keep their budget, and they need to demonstrate that they're reaching the audience the advertisers are after. And on the other hand, advertisers need to demonstrate that performance too in order to keep their budget, because the CMO is not going to be able to be accountable for spending money in places where they're not able to demonstrate the ROI. So those are the main challenges, many different approaches, obviously.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. Super clear. My next question will allow us to learn more about Digiseg and Novatiq, but I'll also ask it to Mathilde and Jill. What alternative solutions to privacy Sandbox been emerging and catching on, and how do they compare in terms of balancing privacy and advertising effectively? How about you go first, Andrew, to keep on what you were saying?
Yeah, so I think, like I said, we tracked and untracked solutions, and topics in Privacy Sandbox, I would argue, is more of an untracked solution in the sense that you're using these cohorts with a good deal of noise in them to target audience and drive media efficiencies. I would argue that the untracked solutions have proven to be just as effective in terms of performance as the tracked solutions and the cookie audiences that we're all used to. We get asked for intent-based audiences all the time. That's not what we provide, but what we've found is that if you qualify an audience, if you're figuring out, okay, I have a luxury EV ad campaign, for example, who buys luxury EVs? Okay, it turns out that there are people in the city and the suburbs because that's where the charging networks are good. There are people with high enough income to be able to afford such a thing. And then there are also people who probably have at least one car because very few people who are in market for a car don't already have one. Things like that. What is it that qualifies those audiences? And then what we're doing is we're cutting away all of the audience would not have qualified in the first place, just leaving you with a really solid prospecting audience that's broad enough to drive the media efficiency you need to do. So you're not paying too much for too small of an audience. You're getting still a significant amount of reach, and you're driving new users into the funnel. And then on the other hand, you're not cannibalizing the tiny niche audience that performs well for you already.
Thank you, Andrew. How about we have your perspective, Tanya, because Novatiq is offering an alternative solution, and I would love to hear from you. How do you compare the solution in terms of balancing the privacy and advertising effectiveness, especially that you said that the solution is 100% deterministic?
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess I probably maybe slightly controversially would say that there may be two camps which are tracked and untracked, but I don't necessarily think that an ID solution is tracking people. The IDs that we effectively facilitate are verification IDs. They don't link to any knowledge of the user themselves. They are specific for each publisher, and they activate at audience cohort level, not on a one-on-one. I would venture to suggest that some ID solutions are not necessarily tracked, some are. And I think the whole merit of a telco solution means that you've got direct access to users on both sides. So on the telco, and we're built from the ground up for privacy first. And that is the whole intent of the platform. So it relies on consent from the telco, getting consent from the users directly for the use of verification. And then at each point of usage in the publisher environment, it relies on consent from the publisher. And to be clear, all we do is verify the first-party IDs that are generated by the publishers. So we don't overlay an ID. There is no such thing as a Novatiq ID. We're just verifying the IDs for the publishers that they generate, right? So I think there are nuances in whether we have tracked or untracked IDs. And personally, from a privacy viewpoint, I think it's absolutely critical that everything's activated at cohort level and that we don't get down to one-on-one, because that is the very creepy thing that people are not interested in, whilst they do want to get the right messages because everyone's fed up with being bombarded. And we already touched on the fact that third-party cookies were not great. And obviously, if we go backwards in time, it was even worse. So we don't want to get back to those days where we're all bombarded with totally irrelevant messaging, because let's face it, we can't do without it because publishers won't survive without it. So advertising needs to exist. We need to make it a better service so that it's seen as a service, not as an interruption.
Sure, Tanya, thank you so much. Phil, I would love to have your perspective because you are on the agency side. I guess you are big all the time emerging alternative solutions. And I would love to have your point of view on, first of all, if there are any criteria on our end to go with one solution rather than another one, and whether you try to balance, have that sweet spot between the privacy and advertising effectiveness.
Yeah, so lots to talk about with this particular question, but I think Andrew pointed to clean rooms within some of the stuff that he was talking about before, and that is a big part of what we're looking at from a GroupM perspective in terms of leveraging data partnerships and expanding those data partnerships, and then combining that kind of data that you'll get from those third parties with proprietary first-party data within the clean room technology to really provide that supercharging of the data for cross-channel activation. There's commerce applications that we're looking at currently with this kind of methodology. So definitely that data partnerships and clean rooms point is key. Measurement's an interesting one where obviously we've talked around privacy sandbox methodologies, but there's a lot to be said about legacy methods of measurement that are really returning to the fore and never really went away. Marketing mix modeling and lower or higher frequency forms of marketing mix modeling to actually give a faster input that can actually be used as a means to replace almost cross-channel attribution, which obviously is gone the way of the dodo with the cookie deprecation stuff that's gone on. And then also building testing methodologies. And this really fits nicely within the privacy narrative more broadly, is thinking about building a learning agenda and thinking about testing new cookieless methodologies, thinking about actually applying direct increment, so using split holdout groups to really provide that always on repeatable testing methodology to feed into those plans that you're looking at. So measurement for me is particularly interesting in this area.
All right, thank you, Phil. You finally, that's it for this question.
Yeah, so I think the question kind of alternative to private sandbox. I think the way we see private sandbox is just one component as to looking to use a combination of signals. But obviously, private sandbox come with, of course, the additional protection, which are from the privacy enhancing technologies that you touch on noise and differential privacy, aggregation, and I think that's very important. And I think we talk about, Phil just touched on the power of first-party data, and I think even increasing protection around that. And I think we announced recently about trusted eviction environment to do really like working with our partners and the first-party data, but also increasing the protection around it. So I think, generally speaking, we would look at like ways that technology can also create that balance between privacy and utility, and I think that's very important for us. But the data clean rooms obviously is something that we've been testing with our pair solution, which more recently on Monday we shared a little bit more about how that we work with CTV. So I think working with the partners like LiveRamp and other data clean rooms, I think, and I would say that's the kind of emerging trends around privacy and technologies and data clean rooms, how that can create a healthy environment where user data is protected, but ad ecosystem is able to deliver against measurement and targeting, as we touched on. So so not exactly looking at Sandbox as just one really signal among many, and I think that's definitely how we view the future of how we can deliver with performance.
Okay, thank you, Mathilde. I still have questions left, and we have around 20 minutes left. So what I would do is I will merge the next two questions. What are the best practices and practical strategies for advertisers, publishers, solution providers to ensure continued success in programmatic advertising? And could you share any examples and case studies that demonstrate how companies have successfully adapted to the changes brought by the deprecation of cookies? How about we start with you, Phil, because you're the one who mentioned first data clean room and marketing model mix. Could you extend a little bit on that?
Yeah, of course. You set a bit of a challenge here in terms of combining the two questions, but I'll do my best. But I think practices, practical strategies, you've got a key point there around artificial intelligence being blended with human intelligence to build prediction engines for modeling the gaps in data and to give us more with less data ultimately, because the data pools are shrinking. And a key point that illustrates the clean room stuff is around a solution that we've developed internally within GroupM called Resolve, an identity mechanism which utilizes first-party and partner data to develop user cohorts that expand audience reach while maintaining privacy compliance. We've proven that in challenging environments like Safari, which I think someone might have pointed to already, that's been cookieless for a long time. And we've shown significant results in increasing audience scale within those cookieless browsers. So that's one key example. I suppose it's also very interesting here to talk about the specific privacy sandbox stuff that we've been working on within GroupM, a project called Project Nova, which has been working closely in partnership with Google around the privacy sandbox. First of all, setting foundations and looking at priority use cases, working with partners, and then building the scale of that. So looking at the ad tech signals and testing and innovating within priority use cases, and then building through that to assess the business utility and benchmark versus third-party cookie approaches. And then as a next step, really establishing best practice guidelines for investment, buying and optimization. So that's a really interesting one. And just one final example I have is more specific just in terms of custom algorithms, where we've been utilizing custom algorithms in the absence of audience targeting, so running them broadly to measure and optimize against a custom KPI, and found these algorithmic approaches utilizing contextual data have been more effective. With an FMCG that we work with in Belgium, for example, we were able to drive 83% more conversions than cookie-based audiences for a leading automotive company. So a lot of stuff going on from different kind of perspectives there.
Thank you, Phil. I realize that merging the question about best practices and concrete examples, case studies can be challenging. I didn't want to put in both, because what we hear all the time is a few things that are theoretical, pitched as best practices, but when you try to implement them, you realize actually that there are so many challenges in the window. I believe that it did make a bit of sense to converge the two, so that the audience, they can realize that what we are sharing here can actually be implemented. Thank you, Phil, for your feedback. How about we go next with you, Mathilde, please, before hearing from Ando and Tanya?
Yeah, I'll go quickly because I know we're nearing the end. I think best practices, I think for us is generally build the right ad infrastructure. So I think that starts with the tagging, and again, this has been an environment where we've had environment that are restricted. So I think the tagging has been very important, and also looking at where you can build a complete picture of your users. So the tagging, but also the measurement. So I think one of the features has been enhanced conversion and how that can help by basically filling the gaps, how but lowering return on ad spend, or lowering the PA and increasing the return on ad spend. So I think we published recently a case study that shared a little bit about on the beach, like a travel client and come from the travel industry. And that's also been showing how by having the right measurement that sets you up for success in an environment where there is less data as hinted. So I think by having the picture and understanding who your customers are, that we also inform the targeting can work. So I think that's been a great example. I would say in general, the best practice is really like, how can you leverage AI with your data? So I think this is really where we are accelerating our effort to make sure our partners can maximize the Google AI as part of their targeting strategy and measurement strategies. Of course, there's a lot of modeling involved, and that's how we move through more automation, less precision, as we talked about earlier, but more prediction. And I think features like enhanced automation obviously can deliver on that promise, or optimized targeting that we look at use that more likely to come. But that always starts with who your user, your highest intent prospect, that can deliver to deliver those higher results. And that can work now. So I think that's already not, waiting for kind of Chrome to finally say that cookie. That's also, it can deliver value now on already environment where we know so much can be restricted.
Okay, thank you. Would you mind going next, Tanya? I sent that question.
No, full
Best practices and
yeah, it's a really interesting question because I think one of the best practices is that people really need to, and I do think there's not everyone is doing this. People really need to look at test and learn to make sure that they are making themselves ready. I know lots of people are, lots of people still aren't. And so one of the best practices would be really look and see what is your strategy as a publisher, as an advertiser, and therefore what are the things that you want to test and learn with to see what works best for you. I personally don't think it's a one-size-fits-all solution. I think there will be adoption of multiple solutions by each player so that they get to something that works well for them in their environment. I think first-party data is critical moving forwards, but I think individual players don't necessarily have the scale, and therefore there needs to be almost a cumulative approach to delivery of combined and individual first-party data sets in the market. So for me, it's about decide what you want to do, what your strategy is, what role it is you're going to be playing, and then test and learn to make sure you get the right mix for you as a publisher, as an advertiser, as a platform, as an agency. For some results-based items, we work really closely with IPG in the Middle East, where we're already distributed in the UAE, and we'll soon have 100% country coverage for the telco-based ID solution. And in that environment, we've had some excellent results in terms of what we can deliver we basically manage over 500 million IDs a week. Obviously, it's a small market. In Japan, conversely, we actually manage up 1.5 billion IDs a day. So shows you the different in sizes of the market. And what we've successfully done is leverage the benefit of telco data and combination first-party data, which we don't need a clean room to be able to match. We can do it because we run the verification IDs for the publishers and the brands, so we can enable them to retarget and then overlay other data sets simply by giving us an audience cohort code. We don't actually need to see the data itself. And we've had some great results. So we've had against cookie-based solutions, we've had 150% increase in conversion for a major bank. We've had a 32% increase for a major automotive company. For the telcos themselves, using their own infrastructure, they've had a 68% reduction in spend against a 12% increase in conversion, which for a telco is absolutely great for anti-churn. So that gives you a flavor.
those are very impressive numbers, Tanya. Thank you. Thank you so much. Andrew, I'm going to leave the last word for you because we have 3 minutes left. And it will be just fair because,
I'll try and be quick. I think when it comes to whatever you're using, whether it's Sandbox, Digiseg, custom algorithms, Novatiq, whatever, I think the main thing pertaining to best practices is to not just guess your audiences. Don't make assumptions. Try and run tests, use algorithms, use modeling to find audiences that really typically align with who your highest value audiences are, whether that's you being a publisher or an advertiser. Don't just assume that because you have a certain contextual topic on a page that it aligns with a certain audience. Don't assume that because you have a brand that audience is your customer. So I think that everybody is really on the right track when it comes to that. At least, the other panelists are totally, I agree with that. In terms of a really successful application, we worked with PhD in Belgium recently and actually won an IAB Mix Award. And we worked with PhD on Mercedes on a campaign that actually drove a 43% lower cost per lead when compared to cookie-based audiences, same flight things, same creators, same everything else. And so again, really these cohort-based audiences have proven to work. They have proven to be not only scalable, but also drive the efficiencies that are going to rival or best cookie-based audiences in many cases. So I think that there's a lot to look forward to in terms of cohorts-based audiences. And Tanya, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to allude that you were tracking and trying to do anything like that. There's many gray areas here, but here it was just limited panel kind of an application. I guess I'm trying to paint in broad strokes, and there's obviously always nuances. But all of the things that I'm saying, or that any of the panelists I think you're saying, so there's no one size fits all. However, I think that overall approach of measuring and trying to find audience that work for your specific application is the single most important thing that's going to help you leverage all these cookieless audiences and have success.
Thank you, Andrew. I'm afraid we are run out of time, so I'm going to skip my last question. I just want to tell the audience that I have taken a screenshot of the question you have submitted, and I thought we can address them right now. But I'll make sure we follow up by email and answer. I see one from my friend Simon, another one from Warren Mills, and 2 questions from 2 anonymous people. So we will follow up and keep you posted on that. Thank you so much, Tanya, Phil, Andrew, and Mathilde for your precious time and valuable insight. I have personally learned a lot from you. Look forward to seeing you in real life, and I hope that the audience learned as much as I did.